3 founders, 3 New Zealand businesses, and in every case, a competitor with more money, more people, more power, and every reason to win. This is a little bit of a best of. 3 conversations from earlier this year put together because they're all circling the same question, and none of them answer it the way that you would expect. Here's what connects them, and it took me a while to see it. Not one of these 3 won because they were better resourced. They won because they were underestimated. Every single one of them found a gap that was only there because someone much bigger wasn't paying attention. In no particular order, we'll start with Shane Young. Hey, it's Josh. Thanks for being part of the show. Most founders don't just build one thing. They build many. The company, the team, and hopefully the legacy. JB Ware in New Zealand understands that your exit isn't an ending. It's the bridge to what you build next, whether that's backing the next generation, funding what matters, or creating impact that compounds across decades. The best exits aren't measured in commas alone. They're measured in what those commas enable. 2 Commas is proudly partnered with JB Ware, building wealth that works as hard as you do.
We literally bootstrapped it. We didn't have any investors. There's money on credit cards. I'm still cutting hair. Business partner's still doing his corporate gigs. So everything went into those. So looking back, everything mattered. There wasn't spare cash. And it wasn't so much in labour because it was sweat equity for both of us, but it was packaging. Big runs now, we had to start buying. We had to understand what planning around that stuff would mean. So fast forward, we managed to we had some good data, good presentations. Again, really thanks to AJ's background. We got a meeting with Woolworths Australia. So we flew over there. We stayed I think I slept in the bath because he snored so much. We had a 1-bedroom place. And we were, it's burnt into my brain, us in Oxford Street at a cafe in the morning, full suits, doing our presentation to each other, like in traffic and buses and trucks. And Oxford Street's crazy, right? And so we're just rehearsing. And we get in this meeting and I was so nervous. I just ran through pretty much all my stuff too fast. And when we got AJ, it was like, it was good, but you probably talked a bit quick. So anyway, the guy was interested, but the buyer said, okay, yeah, your data looks good. And then the sheep joke started. How many sheep have you tried this on? I'm like, oh yeah, great joke. And so he said, you've got, I think we had 8 units in a tray, and we hadn't factored the shelf depth over there was smaller than what they had here.
Yeah.
So they could only put 6 units. So he said, go away and bring me a shelf tray with 6 units and I'll give you another meeting. So we thought that's positive. Went back, changed the shelf tray, got another meeting with him. Go back over, he said, your tray's too wide. Like you need to shave a centimetre for you. And, looking back, it was too wide. But, right. We're like, okay, third meeting. Went back, redone it up, came back. He said, your shelf, there was something. We're up to meeting number 6, right? Remember, no money. Doing it on the smell of an oily rag. So we thought what we need is, a couple of Kiwi boys turning up here with spiky hairdos, promising the world great data. The data almost looked a bit too good. Years later, we went through the presentation. We're like, yeah, it probably would have been a bit unbelievable because it was real numbers. We were doing pretty well in NZ, but right. Versus what the equivalent product in Aussie would do was doing a third of what we said we could sell. So, we probably should have toned it down a bit. So we found an Aussie broker, and all we wanted was someone that we could take into the meeting that had a bit of street cred. He didn't have spiky hair. And so we took this guy into the meeting, and in the meeting, the buyer said, okay, yeah, I'd love it to give you 500 stores. And we both look at each other, and the broker looks at it, and we're like, okay, that's good news.
That sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds good. And we came out, and we did a rookie move. We all high-fived in the foyer, and that was a rookie move because the saying after that was, it ain't no go until you get the PO. And the broker said he'd been doing this for 30 years. He'd never seen a buyer in a meeting say you've got 500 stalls. So we thought that's got to be a good sign. So we were pretty chuffed. So we got purchase orders, went to the bank, borrowed more money. Now we've got an Aussie launch on the map. So
Did you get the purchase order?
We got the purchase orders.
Okay.
Got the purchase orders. Took them to back then, I think it was the National Bank. So we came back, got more money, went to the contract. I mean, we had 2 contract manufacturers. One was doing our wax, one was doing this new funk product. And of course, I think both of them rolled their eyes, and we went and saw them beforehand and said, if we could get an order, can you guys supply, And of course, they had lead times and what have you, and they never really thought that we were going to get this order, as it turns out. So we come back, and it was quite a bit of scrambling around, pressure put on them to deliver the product. Shipped the product over. We had marine insurance for it. We tried to, still part-time gig. This is still a side hustle at this stage. So we're working with our broker now. It's all guns blazing. We got promo people. We're going to do a big launch at a supermarket in Brisbane. It was sort of a flagship Woolworths store that launched. So we flew over there, picked up at the airport, but the broker all excited, drive to the supermarket. Promo girls are all there, all branded up and dominate. It was a thing. We have media
Deal.
and the whole lot. So I go to the aisle to check on the stock, and as I go there, I had two products. I think we'd had a little bit. Something had leaked out of one of the products, and there was a puddle on the ground of like yellow stuff, and I was like, "Oh, that's not going to be good." And so I went through it, and it turns out something had separated in transit. Well, we didn't know at the stage; it was all unknown. But you could imagine the build up, 6 meetings. We got it. Stock, money, manufacturing, fly over, the look on my face, probably should have taken one. And so AJ comes over and I'm like, oh, that's not going to be good. So we went through it. Yeah, probably a third of the products had separated. And this is our launch. So we went from just, riding high and 100%, and we're going to, oh God, that's it. The business is over. Our 4 years is down the toilet.
Yeah.
So
what did you do?
So AJ got on a plane and went back. So we cancelled the event. I think we did a visit to a couple of other stores. Same thing we found. Little puddles of yellow stuff or stuff leaking out. Or actually, a couple of the stores, the stuff that had leaked out had stuck to the tray that we had all the products on, and you couldn't get the product out of the tray. And I'm like, well, that's not going to be good. So anyway, our dreams were dashed. Right, this is it. As soon as this goes back to the buyer, that took a real chance with us, to be honest. It's all over. So we're in Brisbane. So I flew to Sydney. We had it, I think, in a main freight down there. AJ went back to work, and I literally opened. We had just pallet loads of stock. So I went through every single box I opened, and roughly about a quarter of them were damaged, and the rest seemed okay. So a big pile of the damaged stuff, okay stuff. We sort of thought, oh, well, it's going to be over, because we couldn't afford the cost to send people in to every store around the country to swap that stock out. We would have been broke. So there was no way. So we really had no option but to just tuck and roll. So we were coming back. It was it was dark days. Josh, it was dark days. We regrouped. What are we going to do? Well, there's nothing we really can do. We're really just waiting for the phone call from the buyer to say, well, I gave you a chance and you'd blown it. And we were still getting the data on sales, and it was flat probably for about 8 to 10 weeks. And then bit by bit, orders started to dribble through for some of the stock. And we're like, oh, hang on, we haven't had a phone call from the buyer. Stock, and we didn't go to all the stores to swap it out. So we're thinking, well, maybe we just went to the worst stores. You're telling me yourself these stories. So we thought, okay, we've still got a business. So again, one of the contractors, awesome. The other contractor, we had some issues with. They're now not around, so we certainly wouldn't want to name them, but there was some formulation issues there. And the marine insurance wouldn't pay out. They said, no, it's a formulation issue. And the contractor said, no, it's not a formulation issue. It's how you shipped it. You should have put it in a cool store container, so no one would pay for it. So we've got this debt to the bank. No one will pay for it. So what did we do? We thought, stuff it. We're going to set up our own factory. So Shane got all the competitors' products and just started. Remember, I didn't have a chemistry background, but I was a bit of a street brawler with that stuff. So I went through all the competing products and identified there was one raw material that everyone else had that we didn't have. So I got that material, got samples of all the other ingredients, which, this took a little bit of time. It didn't happen in a couple of days, and literally just started testing stuff in the oven to see what would separate at what temperature. and it was a process of elimination. I had been asked, why don't you go and get, an expert to help? But there just weren't experts around. It wasn't like there is now where you could probably get a vast amount of information off the internet. So it was just trial and error. And so we went and we took out a lease on a real tiny factory out in Great South Road, and we got wind staff in. Back then, I think the government would help pay half the wages. We kept the wax product with the wax contractor. We went, AJ had a friend that had a chocolate factory, and he had this big chocolate tank that he gave us, and we wired that up and got water running through it, and that became a manufacturing tank. We've got all these photos, so that's in the corner of the factory, and we started pumping out this product, didn't separate, and we started resupplying that into Australia. And we hired a couple of people out of the industry that knew what they were doing, so we're quality control. And within sort of 4 or 5 months, I guess, of that disaster, we were forced to set up our own business because a large contractor screwed it up. And that's how we ended up doing manufacturing, because a lot of people over the years have said, why would you want to manufacturing? And it was sort of a needs must at the time. So I was still cutting hair at the stage. So I'd get up at 5 a.m. I would drive out to Great South Road, roll up the roller door, get all the tables out, get the paperwork ready, staff would start rolling in. We had a mate of ours, we deputised him production manager. He had no production manager skills at all. And he would manage the staff. I would go and cut hair and sort of leave around 3 o'clock, come back out, check all the labels are on straight, count all the numbers, make sure no one was flogging the product. And that was a day's work. And so I did that probably for about 6 months. And when we finally realised that Australia wasn't going to kick us out, numbers weren't fantastic, but they were okay. We'd resupply this product in. We then went to the other contract manufacturer. This is another good part of the story, Josh. The Dominate wax that you saw there, when we went to the contract, they'd never let us out the back of their factory. So I always dealt with them in their office, and they're great people to this day. They've been great people to deal with. And we had to go and we came to an arrangement. We've set up our own manufacturing now. And we told them, they knew about the disaster, like I said. And so we needed to come pick up all our pots and all our packaging. And when we went there, the reason they wouldn't let us out the back is they just had all the pots on a table and they were pouring in jugs just like we were. So they didn't want us to see that they were doing exactly the same thing. So that's all we did. We lined all the pots out and, poured all the products. So now we've got 2 products, our own tiny little factory, and now the headache of having your own staff and what have you. Sales started to pick up a bit in Oz, and then everything sort of turned around, like with our own products. So we're like, well, that's it. We're now manufacturers and sellers of product. And so it was probably the biggest defining moment that really allowed us to, which was a disaster at the time. We can still remember the feelings of 4 years of hard work down the toilet. But if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't have been able to, have speed to market and really controlled our own destiny around, fast forward years. We'd go and we were in the UK. We launched into Superdrug over there. We'd bring products back from the UK. We'd have samples done up within 2, 3, 4 days. We'd then get a meeting with the local rep or the Aussie and present them products literally within 2 weeks. And so that actually became, a superpower for us, really, was that, really owning that bit of the equation. And we really, lived and breathed it with our now non-spiky hairdos and now great shaving products. So we launched that. We did a bit of IP trading. We were in the States, going back and forth, trying to find an angle there. We launched in the UK, and we noticed in the UK there was a Procter & Gamble brand called New Wave hair gel. And we'd looked at doing hair gel for Dominate. We sort of had quite premium pricing here, and hair gel back then, it was pretty, it was $5, and we didn't want to bring out a $5 product. And so we saw this New Wave. So we came back and we saw that P&G hadn't licensed the intellectual property for New Wave in New Zealand and Australia. So we registered it, made up a new product called New Wave, and got into the supermarket. And we didn't think, knowing how many lawyers they must have, we thought there's no way we could get away with this. And we got away with it. So suddenly we had this new brand called New Wave, and
Genius.
and it was really just speed to market. We literally came back. I checked on, Trade NZ, it was not there. Checked on Oz, wasn't there. So we got a pot that looked similar, and so next minute we're in the hair gel market with this hair gel. And it went gangbusters, like overnight, went gangbusters, like took off.
Wow.
And we find out years later that when P&G, the local guys found, who are these guys in their garage making this hair wax? It became quite a story. So that brand is still around. I digress. No, we eventually got out of the New Wave brand, but we switched to a brand called Shockwaves. It's still the number one selling hair gel in New Zealand, the number 2 in Oz. So we became the hair gel experts. And hair gel right now in 2025 has made quite a comeback. So, I've got daughters, so ballet or dance and whatever, they're all using it. And with the current hairdos aren't spiky hairdos. As it turns out, hair gel works quite well for it. Right. So that got us into the hair gel.
A quick one while I've got you. You've probably listened to every business podcast going, this one obviously included. And the biggest calls in your business still feel super hard and are yours to make alone. Talking to founders in exactly the spot, what I've worked out is that more content just won't fix this problem. What you need is frameworks that work in a room of people going through the same journey. That's the Comma Club. There's 50 founding places, and when they're gone, the founding rate goes up with them. Please head to joshcomrie.com to learn more.
And then just a little later on, I think it would have been 2009, 2010, there was a change of government.
Yeah.
And we thought, well, maybe this is where our fortunes are going to turn around, because while the Labour government and Helen Clark was the Minister for Culture and Heritage,
yeah, that's right.
had been the champion of this NZ Live website, we thought, well, actually, there's going to be perhaps less of an appetite to duplicate the efforts of the private sector under the new regime. And so we made quite a bit of noise, and we reached out to our MPs and all of that sort of thing. And unfortunately, the message back was a resounding, not our problem, it's a legacy issue, we don't intend to make any changes. And so here's us still on the smell of an oily rag trying to compete with the New Zealand government and their millions of dollars of taxpayer funding. So we had a bit of an idea. We talked to a number of people, commentators, about this, and people with high, reasonably prominent profiles who had said, this is just crazy. There's so much money that's being spent, and we'd seen the budgets because they were publicly available, and they're just not getting the traction. Then we'd shared these contrasting views of their stats versus our stats, and people were saying, well, if only people knew about this, how are you going to get the word out about it? And so I came up with this idea for a website, and it was called ynzlive.com. And at the very top of it was this counter, and every second the counter ticked up to show how many dollars had been spent so far. And down the sides of it were all of the comments that we'd had from the various commentators who had said, this is absolutely crazy, why are we allowing this to continue? And there was this new social website called Twitter, and Twitter had an API, and so I know how to use APIs, so I created a Twitter handle for the YNZ Live site and set up a bot to follow everyone in New Zealand on Twitter. And people would see this follow request come in, and they think, oh, I'll follow that, and I'll go and have a quick squiz at the website.
Mm-hmm.
And within a fairly short space of time, we were the second most followed New Zealand Twitter account.
I didn't know this.
And so then we went out to all of those commentators who had been talking about it and said, well, we have got the word out. We're actually one of the most followed Twitter accounts in New Zealand. And they then amplified that message out to their audiences and said, isn't this crazy how this is happening? Next thing you know, we're getting an invitation to appear on TV on Breakfast. And Alison Mao was interviewing Michael and said, tell us about how this is being allowed to continue, and he shared all of the stats and the data and the budgets. And they said, well, we've invited the minister, it's Chris Finlayson, to appear and defend this use of taxpayer funds for nzlive.com. And Chris has said, well, this is just something from the previous government. We don't really know much about that. And my recollection is that Alice and Mao then brought up the questions that Chris had asked in question time in opposition about why the Labor government was spending so much money on nzlive.com.
Stop it.
So that was a bit of a coup for us, and we got an invitation then to come down to Wellington and have a chat and figure out how we can find a way forward amicably. And we did that. We provided all of the information that we could about Event Finder and what we'd been doing. There was an inquiry launched, and the government CIO produced a report, and he interviewed a whole lot of industry stakeholders and events promoters and other events guides, and his recommendation at the end of all of that was, guys, you need to shut this down.
Mm-hmm.
Suggest that you transfer the website and the database to Event Finder, and that's what they did. And they provided us with a couple of staff for a few years. On their side, they had full access to the Event Finder systems. They could fulfil the mandate that they had under MCH to promote those events and particularly New Zealand's cultural events. And we had a great relationship with them from that point on. And there's just some fantastic people on that team who, all they wanted to do was get the word out about these great things that were happening around the country, and they were able to do that. We supported them with the 100th anniversary commemorations of Gallipoli, and they were able to use the Event Finder system and platform and APIs and everything that we'd built to achieve what they wanted. So it was a great outcome for everyone.
Yeah. Looking back on it now, I mean, you were grappling for your survival as a business, and you were threatened by an incredibly well-funded competitor who was seemingly not listening to the pragmatic rationalism about, why are we doing this, against each other here when we could work together. But looking back on it now and the response that you made, what's the kind of lesson that you took away from that?
I think the main lesson is that you're never beaten until you're beaten. I remember coming away from that first meeting in Wellington and Michael and I going and getting a beer on Courtney Place, and we were despondent, and there was a real question between us as to how far do we want to keep pushing this.
Yeah.
But we had the conversation right then and there, which was, all right, well, are we going to give this our absolute best shot? And we decided, we would do that.
Yeah.
And it would have been so easy to give up at that point. And the odds were absolutely against us. But, you're never beaten until you're beaten.
Yeah. That resilience thing, I completely agree with that. So your main investor, being APN, didn't have the funds to carry you forward. Your main competitor had essentially said, here's our business. Wonderful, thank you. There was no money that changed hands, by the way?
No.
Interesting enough, we never got to seven figures in Australia. Yeah. So because we started in 2015.
Yes.
And it was just really, really hard work.
Yeah.
So then we looked at, okay, what's our play with Australia? We want to have okay income from it. But actually it turned out that was more important to say that we were operating in Australia.
Yeah.
And we were just starting. And it's like, okay, what can a small agency do that gets the attention of the bigger ones? So basically looking into what can a small agency do to be kind of like, playing with and it's just taking a little bit of their revenue and being annoying. It's kind of that being an annoying itch.
Yes.
So they were starting to kind of, what's this agency that's starting to eat into our into our revenue and profits with other kind of like larger. We got Aussie Home Loans as a customer.
Yes.
A couple of big insurance companies. We're only doing really small jobs, but they didn't really know that. They just knew that we were growing in that market.
Yes.
So that's kind of like when the conversation started with that in the end led to the exit. It actually started from Australia because we were just getting annoying.
Yes. So did they directly approach you about the acquisition talks, or did you engage with an advisor? How did that early conversation go?
It went directly. So I'm never really kind of a big fan of brokers or that kind of model, because it's it kind of says that you want to sell your business versus somebody else coming to you. It's a way stronger profile if you say, well, we're not for sale.
Yeah.
But if you want to buy us, then we're open to the conversation. So it actually came via Google. So we were a Google marketing platform sales partner in Australia and New Zealand. And Google was approached by the Havas group, who in the end acquired us. And they were looking for which is funny, but they were looking for an optimization agency. And they basically asked, hey, well, who do you think is good fit? And then Google in Australia said like, oh, have a chat to the Ketsi people.
Right.
So they approached us, which was really helpful. And it was a good timing as well. And they already knew us because we were kind of doing a couple of white label jobs for them. So that was also kind of like well set up, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
And so they approached you, would you be interested? We're not selling, but let's have a conversation. So how did you move from that to a real conversation about numbers? Did you kind of, well, we're not selling, but if you give us a number that's going to be compelling, we'll talk to you or present us with an offer letter? How did you navigate that? And did you get someone else to help you through those conversations?
No, we didn't actually. We didn't get any help. We had got like legal help and all those kind of things. But we basically started to have conversations with CFO, and then he said like, okay, we'll present to the full management team in Sydney what your business is all about. It's like, oh yeah, we can do that. So we flew to Sydney, but to actually present. When the great thing was when we flew to Sydney, apparently there was another agency that kind of heard that we were looking at selling. Mm-hmm. That's when it gets interesting, right?
Pay attention.
Yes, that's right. So it's like, okay, wait a second. If we can get another offer, then you multiples will increase. So we, I don't know, I can't mention the name, but there was a very large agency.
Like global or Australia?
Global.
Yeah, okay.
But based in Australia, had an office in Australia. So the Australian office approached us and said like, hey, when you're in Australia to pitch these guys, can you also come over to pitch to our guys? Which we did. So we kind of like decided we were flying back on a Friday, and when they said like pitch on Friday, so we moved our flights and we just rushed in, did the same, just quickly switched out the logos, with the same pitch, which was really kind of, it was really interesting to do that. And all of a sudden you go like, hey, this can actually lead to something that is way more interesting than it initially looked like. Not like getting a bidding war, but you get some tension, deal tension, always good.
Perceived or real, it has just so much value in terms of the outcome for the seller or the vendor.
Yes.
And so did you get offers from both companies, or was it enough for the original company that they were kind of pushed into the place of going, we need to move on this?
Yeah, we got verbal offers from both.
Yeah.
And then we said like, we want to see like an LOI, right? Letter of intent. And then Havas moved really quickly on that because they obviously, but we're doing quite a lot of work for them already.
Yes.
So if we would have gone with the other agency, but we obviously didn't say that at the time, then we would have a lot of the revenue that they took into account in terms of the multiples actually coming from referrals that they gave us.
Yeah.
So we would have taken that out for the other agency. So I think that in the end, that deal, well, we looked at the numbers and then whatever they were going to offer didn't work out as well.
Yeah.
But not only that, like Havas offered is a very entrepreneurial business, and they offered us kind of full independence still.
Thanks so much for listening to the show. If you've gotten this far, I reckon you've probably enjoyed it. And there's more available for you in the form of my book, 2 Commas. It's available on my website, joshcomrie.com. I've done an Audible version, which is on amazon.com, and there's a Kindle one kicking around on either of those resources as well. I've had some wonderful, unsolicited feedback from early readers. They describe it as being punchy, clear, helpful, and actionable. What it's not is a guide on how to sell your company. You can go to ChatGPT for that. It's more insightful, experiential-based, and a bit of a blend of psychology, philosophy, and what it takes to build something meaningful, and what all that means afterwards. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you grab yourself a copy.